Hello, I want to welcome you to Masters with Masters. This is a knowledge learning event. We've partnered with the IAF's International Program Project Management Committee, and this is an activity where we pull together two master practitioners with a lot of excellent experiences in space running major programs, where they share some of their lessons, their experiences, and their thoughts pertaining to some of the issues and the challenges in terms of managing some of the major missions that we have. We're in Naples, Italy for the 63rd International Astronautical Congress, and we're thrilled, or I'm thrilled at least, to be here. And we have two wonderful guests who have a tremendous amount of interest and commitment to making some of the major aerospace programs successful. And I'd like to start by introducing Dino Brandola. Dino is currently the director of the Space Infrastructures Program at Thales Alenia Space in Torino, Italy. Earlier in his career, he served as the program manager for development of the Space Hab research modules. He also worked in support of the Italian Space Agency to part of the redesign of the International Space Station. So I'd ask for a welcome to Dino. And we also have Alan Thurkettle, retired from ESA in 2008. He served as the International Space Station Program Manager in that role. He joined ESA in 1973, beginning his career working on the Concorde supersonic aircraft. Served in many capacities at ESA, including project manager of the Columbus module, and before leading ESA's International Space Station. So I also welcome Alan. Please welcome him. So first of all, I want to really thank both of you for being here to share some of your thoughts. We'll have an opportunity to get questions from the audience here, which is composed of your colleagues, practitioners, and young professionals. So you can feel free to ask any question. We'll get those. But let's start with the collaboration about Space Station and how that took place and how that evolved. And maybe I'll start with you, Dino, in terms of you started with the focus as being an industry manager, working with certainly ESA and with NASA and with the other partners. What was the evolution of that? What were some of the characteristic roles that you played and some of the challenges that you were part of in that experience?
Thank you. Good morning to everybody. We have to remind the space station is really the most challenging program that the industry has to afford, together with, of course, with the agency. And the space station has been considered also the first program in which we can transform the competition in cooperation. We have to remember that the space station burned at the beginning of the 90s when the climate, the political climate changed, and so we have been encouraged to transform the competition in cooperation. And doing this, we have been really fortunate because we had the possibility to cooperate with the industry that in the past were keeping secret the things, and now to cooperate and to have everything open, to promote the synergy with the experience among different experience and to get the best results. Italy was always interested and has always followed this political endeavor, and since the very beginning of the station, Italy tried to participate actively. And in fact, Italy participated in the space station with two different channels. The first one was a bilateral cooperation between the Italian Space Agency and NASA through a memorandum of understanding that has been signed in 1992. The second channel was through the European Space Agency, so participated to the European program, in particular Columbus, Cupola, Note 3, and ATV. So this means that for industry we were exposed to different approaches, if you wish, for the Italian bilateral, we were prime contractor, and so we had to interface more directly NASA, and that role was really a very challenging role, because for us it was really the first experience in human spaceflight business to be a prime contractor. We were subcontractor in the past for Space Lab, we were subcontractor for Space Ed, but for the first time we really were part of this challenge to be a prime contractor. And then we use the experience, we use also some basic design feature that we developed for MPLM to contribute to the European program, like Columbus, like ATV, and for Node 3, for instance, but in less part. The experience, the basic experience, has been also transferred to the Cupola program. For Cupola and for Node 3, we also played a role as a prime contractor. That was also very challenging, while for MPLM was really the first time, and so was certainly more difficult for us. My experience for the space station started since the very beginning, and I really have appreciated it, in particular the initial phase when I had the opportunity to participate to the redesign phase in 1992 in Crystal City. I have been involved for basically 1 year in support of the Italian Space Agency, and I had the opportunity, first of all, to learn how the space station should be conceived at very top level. At that time there were 3 possible configurations competing, and for every configuration we had to study the benefit and the drawback at any level, including our contribution, that at that time was meant to be 2 small mini logistic modules. I really was an exciting experience, a lot of things I learned from at that time for the system design, but also for the operational aspect. And the concept to start from the top to define the mission requirement, define the system requirement, then to go to the element requirement was really a lesson that is really important to be applied for any project that we have to develop in the future. Then I believe this is really a remarkable experience, and also personal experience, because at the end of the space station, I always say that we started with 2 mini MPLM, and we completed the redesign phase with 3 MPLM, largest and bigger. So I believe that as a company, as an Italian Space Agency, we did a good job at that time.
You touched on a lot of things with the complexities. We'll come back to some of this, but let me ask Alan, what were some of your reflections, roles, nature of the collaboration in terms of space station, and also maybe how you started working together, what worked, what didn't?
Firstly, thank you very much for the invitation to come and address this audience and to be part of this Masters with Masters scheme. I think it's a very good scheme, and I quite enjoy it. Collaboration on the human spaceflight side between the Europeans and the Americans, and now with Japan and Canada and Russia as well, has been going on since 1970 something, very early in the 70s. Where we started, as far as ESA is concerned, doing our very first ever human spaceflight program, the Space Lab. And I think when people look at the agreements that were made at that time, they look to be very, very one-sided. We, ESA, would design and develop a space lab. We would pay for all of that. We would give that space lab to NASA, and in exchange we'd get half a flight and preferential treatment for future ones, which we would have to pay for. As I say, on the face of it, that sounds as though it's a pretty one-sided type of agreement, but we started knowing somewhat less than absolutely nothing about human spaceflight. And at the end of Space Lab, we produced a vehicle that worked. It worked very well indeed. We'd learned an awful lot from NASA. We'd learned how to develop human spacecraft. And therefore there was a much larger payoff that didn't appear in the government agreements. The other thing, of course, was that subsequently NASA bought another space lab. So we were able to get a lot more money, American money, into European industry, which is almost a dream to achieve that. So we ended up Space Lab with very, very good relationships with NASA. Almost immediately invited to join in with the space station program, and you'd have thought we'd never have talked to one another before. At least on the technical side, we started from square one. There was no, oh, these guys have been our partners for the last 12 years, so therefore we can just carry on as it were. On the negotiation side, on the other hand, there was a lot more equality on the other thing. Not an equality of size, we were only going to do 8% and NASA do 75%. But in terms of strength of negotiation, of getting what we wanted rather than giving everything away, we got, for instance, the agreement from NASA, which wasn't an editorial, to get Ariane access to the space station. I think our idea at that time was we were going to launch Columbus on an Ariane. Thank God we didn't try and go down that route in the end. But what we didn't think at the time, and subsequently came about, was that we got ATV to the station on Ariane. And that's been good not only for us, but I think for the station as well. So we had good relationships, but I left the program in '87 and didn't come back until '95. And then all of the redesign had been done, the Russians had come on board, as Dina was alluding to, and relationships are really rather good for a good few years. And then I'm sure Dina will remember that in the early part of 2000, be careful how I put it, but the Americans went into a period of introspection. They looked very seriously at the cost overruns that were occurring in the station, and were under a tremendous scrutiny from OMB, and didn't really pay the right amount of attention to their partners during this period of time. Personally. And it got so bad that the other partners in the station at that time were talking to one another about what are we going to do if the Americans pull out, can we operate a station without them? Relationships were really very, very bad indeed. It was an absolute low point of cooperation. And ironically enough, it was Columbia, the disaster of Columbia, that seemed to be the catalyst to change all of that. Because by now there was a station up there, there were people that were permanently on board, we wanted to keep them on board, and the shuttle was grounded. And there was therefore a complete and utter dependence upon our wonderful Russian colleagues to look after the logistics of the station. And that brought everybody back together again. It went along with changes of personnel and everything else, but from that moment onwards the relationships were really very, very good indeed. There was total cooperation. We weren't soft with one another, but it was total cooperation and it worked very well. And happily we had the support of the industry as well, far more so than the support of our member states, who were very keen to cancel cancel the station during the early part of 2000. So as industry went through the exercise of learning how to do these things, we also went through the exercise of learning how to do these things, and it was quite a long curve, but it was a good curve. And I think the thing in the end that mattered was that people developed trust and respect for one another's roles and responsibilities. And if you've got trust and respect and you've got transparency, then I think you can solve pretty much anything that you ever want to try and do.
Yeah, both of you have talked about the challenges in doing something new that's unique, obviously, and then the importance of the relationships. And I'd like to maybe come back to that in terms of how do you create effective relationships when you're in a very tense environment. Maybe we can get to that by first talking about the government-industry collaboration, because one of the things that's true of all these major programs is that there's this partnership on the industry side and on the government side. And what are maybe some of the common misunderstandings or problems from these two different perspectives, and how do you overcome them? How do you learn in terms of to work effectively and successfully with each other in those different areas? Maybe start again with that one this time.
Yeah, it's true. I think firstly it's rather simple you can characterize the roles of the agency, government in your terms, of the agency with industry in simple terms. The agency is responsible for policy, it's responsible for strategy, it's responsible for the creation of a program, the idea of a program, and it's responsible thereafter for the procurement of that program via industry. It's not our responsibility to design the things, that's what industry have to do. Industry are responsible for the implementation. They support the strategy, they support the policy, but they're responsible for the implementation of the programs that we do. Now, as an agency, we have a responsibility to make sure we get good value for money for the taxpayer, for our member states. Industry have got the responsibility to make profit for their shareholders. So you've got built-in conflict, it would seem. But no, you haven't really got built-in conflict, because the cement that pulls those two things together is that both of you want to have mission success. And that's the thing that you rely on in order to bring those apparently conflicting things together. Now, the basis for making sure that you bring those things together is to have a really good solid contract. If you have got the proper scope defined in the contract, if you've got the proper responsibilities defined in the contract, the protection clauses, the penalties and the incentives, and the right finance. If you've got the solid basis for that, then you can, there'll still be plenty of problems, but you know what you're starting from, you know who's responsible for what and how it's going to be done. And in my opinion, you get to have a good solid contract like that by front-loading a program, by putting a good amount of money into phase B before you get into the design and development and detailed testing and all that stuff, so that the scope of the contract that you put down, your mission requirements, your system requirements, your interfaces are defined, so that they know what they can do and you know what you're asking to do. And then you've got the proper basis for it. But still, you need to make sure that you also get the right personal relationships between the colleagues that are working this thing. You know, theory is sitting on opposite sides of the table, but you've got the same goal. So you move around and you sit next to one another and you work it. And if you've got, again, the trust and respect of the counterparts, then it works. It takes time to get there. Doesn't mean you have to be soft with one another. He probably thinks I'm soft, but you have to be fair, you have to be honest, you have to be reasonable about things. But he's got his responsibilities, my responsibilities. But we've got this common cement that we have to go for, and I think that was the key to getting it done. And that way, you can avoid the misunderstandings. There are problems, and you may even want different ways of solving them. But you can discuss them, you can argue about them, and you can come to an agreed answer in the end, and get on with it. And I think that the key is to doing it.
Yeah, so it's starting with a clear contract, understanding what the requirements are, and then it's building that relationship through working together. And I'll ask Dino from an industry perspective, is that the way it happens? And the other question is Alan soft?
Alan is correct. He's not soft. Certainly, he has always demonstrated to be correct. I have to say that for the human spaceflight, for human spaceflight, there is really a common interest that is between agency and industry, that is the mission success. But the mission success is to guarantee the safety of the astronaut, because this is the key element that brings all the talent, all the effort of in a common vision to solve, to identify, to solve the problem in order to guarantee that the astronaut, when they are at 400 kilometers from ground, they feel safe, their life is guaranteed. So we have their life in our hand. This is what is the most important motivation for everybody that is working in the human spaceflight activity. Having said that, I believe that is correct, Alan. We have to distinguish the role, and the role can be exercised even if apply great respect, even apply a friendly relationship, because this is in favor to have a possibility to discover since the beginning problem, to identify since the beginning solution, and to help the program to continue on a timely fashion. I believe that the way to work in a more familiar manner is extremely important, based on a trust with each other. We have to absolutely guarantee that we never deny things or deny problem for any aspect, from quality, from technical, or also for economical aspect, because sometimes the program are in trouble due to the economical aspect. It's true that industry have basically the interest to make a profit on the business they are doing. But the profit is not the major element. The industry have as a basic element to guarantee the prosecution of the business, in the sense that if we do properly the job that we are committed to do, certainly we have the credit to guarantee the commitment. This is really an experience for terrestrial space. When we started the program with NASA, especially on MPLM, our credibility was really limited. In fact, we had an organization to have a Boeing to oversee our activity. And after a couple of years, Boeing was not longer requested to do this, because we increased our credibility. We have demonstrated NASA to be able to do the job, and so we have the possibility to interface directly with NASA. And so it means the credibility is an extremely important element, and the transparency. So it means that all the procedure, all the documents are important to provide a report, to provide evidence. But what is important is to make sure that through the people that are working at both sides, industry and the agency, there is enough trust that provide the full evidence of the problem. And this is the key element for the success of the program.
One of the things we're doing is we're collecting questions from the audience here, and I'm sure there's going to be some good questions for you shortly. I'd like to go into maybe one of the key issues, because in listening to you talk, it goes smooth. You set up a contract, requirements, you work together, and it sounds like almost anyone can do it. But obviously the key is you have a lot of key decisions that lead to different directions and outcomes. And I'd like to look at it from the standpoint of your thoughts when you have to make those big, bold decisions that are really key. How do you get there? How do you get to the good solution? And do you have maybe any examples or stories of real key situations where a bold decision was made? And how do you go forward with that? How do you balance that with appropriate risk? And either of you, do you know?
Okay. I believe that in our environment, the decision must be collective decision. We cannot admit to have a decision taken in isolation, because the results of our job is need the support of many disciplines, have many inputs to be collected before to taking strong decision. We can make a score of the element that we have to decide about. The first place certainly should be relevant the quality and safety. We cannot admit to take a decision without having the full consensus of the team or the interface parts, and in particular to have the decision taken together with the agency. We cannot do in isolation, take a decision, because otherwise we really introduce an unacceptable risk to the program. The second level is technical performances. So it means that in the technical sense, maybe we can do some decisions that are not fully shared by everybody, but still we need the consensus, and we need to go through the proper process to get the decision approved, because this affects technical performance and could affect also some contractual aspect. Then there are decisions related to the schedule or the contract. In this sense, as a manager, we can take decision more in isolation or as a committing element that need to be materialized with a special effort. In this case, you can do bold decision and commit yourself to materialize the decision. But certainly this cannot be assumed for the quality, for the safety.
So you have a heavy emphasis on joint decisions, consensus, the notion of the team coming together, things never being done in isolation is a key component. And Alan, what thoughts or experiences do you have in terms of those bold decisions and how they lead to success?
In the agency, we tend to have a much smaller team than I have in industry, so you get a lot less input. You get the input from industry, of course. But the principles that Dino was talking about are right. I wanted to take the opportunity to give one example of a decision. There wasn't a huge decision in the big picture terms, but it was one that was quite important and one that I felt very good about. When we started Columbus, the life support system as part of the proposal was an American system. It was a Hamilton Standard system, bless them, and that was the baseline. Whilst we were negotiating the final contract, we decided that well, this was meant to be a European module, and life support is pretty crucial to human spaceflight, so we wanted to Europeanize that. So in a relatively short period of time, we looked at the possibility of producing the components and doing the systems engineering in Europe. And yes, it could be done. And as a matter of fact, I don't think I'm giving too many secrets away. It was even cheaper than going to Hamilton Standard. So this was win politics, win programmatics. That doesn't happen very often. So we entered into that, and everything was fine. Now there was a fan, or a set of fans that were necessary for Columbus that were part of this process. The fan contractor was responsible to the life support contractor, who was responsible to the mechanical integrator, who was responsible to the prime contractor, who was responsible to the agency. So the fan was a long way down the food chain as far as I was concerned. Nevertheless, I started to get intimations, I think first of all from Dino in fact, that this fan company was a very, very small company owned by a single guy, was in serious financial trouble and were likely to go bankrupt. They'd just not realised the complexity in particular of all the paperwork they've been asked to do. And they were running out of cash, and this guy simply couldn't find more money. Now I had a fixed price contract with a prime contractor, so purely as a customer I could say, industry, go sort that out. But I was afraid that if I did that, then one, the company would go bankrupt, two, we'd have to therefore find a replacement, which would probably have to be Hamilton Standard. It would take forever to get that all sorted out. So the life support contractor, the mechanical integrator contractor, the prime contractor would probably also suffer very, very badly indeed, as well as this piece of cement, the mission success. We'd put the schedule way, way out of kilter. So I sat down with the prime contractor counterpart and said, it's illegal for me to put money into this thing, but I'm going to put money into it. But I need for the man who owns this company to put his money into it. I need the life support contractor to put it in. I need Dino to put it in. I need the prime to put it in. And then we'll top up and we'll pay a decent amount of this. I was lucky I worked for a director who would allow me to do this kind of thing, even though it was way out of the box as far as the contract was concerned. And we did that. We managed to achieve it. It wasn't done overnight, but it was achieved. Those fans are on orbit now. They're working beautifully. They're doing great on Columbus. And I was really happy that we could find a solution that wasn't the right way of doing business, but was sure as all right for the program. And so sometimes you can, we even had to call it an improvement in order to make it contractually legal. But sometimes you can end up making decisions that they can be difficult, but they're really right for the program, and that's a nice thing to do.
Yeah, so it's a great story because it also goes back to a lot of examples of the relationships. Because what I heard also is that you weren't surprised by the challenge or the difficulty. You heard it, from Dino, or as part of your team, you have experts who should be out there saying, this is something I'm concerned with. And then at the other end of the stream, you had a leadership that was obviously confident in you, so you were able to, as you said, work out of the box, for solutions that, in terms of being able to be innovative and creative to solve things.
That's true. There's one difference maybe between the way that ESA was running Columbus and perhaps the way that NASA might run some of its programs. We were pretty much hands off. We were close to the prime. We were fairly close to the co-prime. But once it got to the subsystem and the equipment level, it was at reviews. That was where we saw them. We couldn't do a day-to-day management of these things. So when we first got the information about this thing, it was we've got fans. So it wasn't something where I could go to my team and say, you dumbass, why on earth didn't you know this before it happened, type of thing. So it was, as I say, a long way down the food chain. But because there was some trust and respect, I think, within the managers of the community, we were exposed to this thing, and we were able to come up with this construction because we each trusted one another that we'd do our piece of it.
And let me go maybe to the other side of the coin. So you've obviously had a lot of very successful decisions. Certainly, you can see the outcomes in terms of the missions, but there were probably also some bad decisions, or decisions that, in retrospect, you would have done different. Can you shed light on that? And what do you learn from when things don't go the way that you anticipate? How do you adapt from that?
I can remember a couple of major examples of decisions that were not resulting in a positive for the company. One certainly is during the Columbus program in 2007, I believe. We were in a phase where we have accumulated a significant cost overrun for several things. We try to identify all the cost overrun and to collect in change notice and to present this request to ESA. And the real mistake that we made as a company was not to coordinate properly with Astrum all these requests, and we pushed directly the CCN and the request to ESA. And this really results in a very bad result, because from the other side of the table there was people like Alan Tirkettle that were not able to accept that we were not coordinating as industry and properly demonstrate as a world team the problem. And so this really was a strategic mistake that we make, and was another example. But from the example, of course, we learn a lot, and since that our cooperation with Astrum has been really reinforced in Columbus and in all other programs that we are doing. Another example is the transport of ATV Jules Verne, the first ATV, the transport from Bremen to Kourou. As a responsible of the Integrated Cargo Carrier, ICC, we are also providing the container and the system that control the environment inside the container. And while Astrum is responsible for the transport itself. So it's a way to break the responsibility that is not certainly very efficient. Nevertheless, this was the content. And in doing this, because there was a rush to transport, the problem of the delay, potential delay in the launch. So everything has been done during August time frame, and really was not properly coordinated. And during the transport, there was a failure of the container environmental system. And this results in a huge effort that it was necessary to analyze the consequence of this anomaly, to demonstrate that the hardware was not affected or was able to survive the increase of humidity during a certain period. And this requested a lot of analysis and demonstration, and we were really in trouble. We have been forced to dismount some sensor that had an optical sensor that could have been damaged by the humidity, and to replace and to repair. So we have been exposed to significant losses due to this. This is another lesson learned, that we have to always coordinate. Even the contract is separating the things, we have to be more coordinated, in particular in preparing emergency procedure in case something happened that is not predictable, to be prepared for the emergency, to be prepared in such a long journey that is basically 3 weeks aboard of the ship, and to have people that are on board of the ship capable to replace or to repair, to have enough spare to do this. And so this is a lesson that we learn after this problem. In fact, TV2, TV3 has been transported properly, and now at TV4 that is in Kourou, everything was perfect.
Constant vigilance, I guess, and coordination, even things that may seem straightforward. Alan, any good examples you can think of bad decisions, and how do you learn from them, react to them?
Yeah, one I'm really quite ashamed of, actually. When we negotiated with NASA for the Columbus launch, shuttles a reimbursable service, and we were going to have to pay a couple of $100 million for the launch, and we didn't want to pay European money to the Americans. And the whole concept of the barter was generated, and it was decided that NASA's responsibility was to build the nodes. If we could build nodes 2 and 3, then that would be a large offset for the launch of the module. Now, NASA had a very good relationship with IAC, and through them with Alania, I'm sorry, not IAC, Alania, and through the MBLM program. And one of the conditions for NASA was that the nodes were so crucial to the system design of the station that NASA wanted to have a direct relationship with IAC for this, and therefore a direct relationship with Alania as well. And that the role of ESA in this was to provide the money. So the taxpayer would provide the money to industry. That was great from our point of view, but NASA would have the management via IAC to Alania. I was disappointed by this arrangement, because I wanted to have the chance to manage the nodes. I thought they were a fantastic thing to do. But I had an excellent director, Mr. Furstenbusch, who explained to me that there's a much bigger picture. You do as you're damn well told, and we need to sign up this barter. It's a good deal for us. We're going to provide a fixed amount of money, and it's up to others to sort it out then. Now, we still had a requirement to report to our member states how this was going, because it was still their money that we were spending, even though we weren't in the management loop. So I was meant to keep a watching brief over this thing, to get progress reports and blah, blah, blah. And to be honest, I was, maybe I was a bit sulky, I don't know. But I just didn't pay any attention to this thing. We were busy doing Columbus and starting up ATV and having all sorts of problems. And so basically, when there was a PDR or a CDR, we'd go down as an observer. When there was a program board 3 or 4 times a year, I'd maybe phone up and say, where are you on the program? But I didn't pay any attention to it at all. I don't know how many years we've been into it, but all of a sudden it came to our attention, again I think probably with Dino contacting me, that Alania, had got a 65 or 67 million overrun on this thing, and a lot of this was due to changes that have been going on in the program, requirement changes and everything else, that had all been discussed in boards and that kind of thing between NASA and us and Alania. They'd done the work, the majority of the work, but it appeared that they weren't even going to get paid for any of this stuff. And what the hell could we do about it? And I felt really bad about that, because I'm not saying that if we'd been involved day to day, this would all have been avoided. But if we'd been involved day to day, we sure as heck would have found out about it a heck of a lot earlier, and maybe we'd have been talking about units of millions rather than tens of millions. Happily, we were able to get out of it, again, because there were people that trusted one another. In this case, Bill Gerstenmaier took a personal interest in this thing. Dina was very, very instrumental in it, myself, and in the end, Arzi came on board as well. And we found a way of divvying up the pile so that these guys at least could survive. That we didn't need to get extra money. We'd still got a little bit of reserve left on the ISS program at the agency level. And Arzi contributed, and NASA contributed as well, because they contributed a fair amount because they caused some of the problems. So we were only able to resolve it because people believed in one another. We only got into that problem because people didn't pay proper attention. And that was a bad decision, not to pay attention.
Yeah, so the maintaining the focus, again, very similar kind of thing, and then the importance of having a team of talented folks who can take action and move out. Let me go to some of the questions that we have now from the audience here. And the first one gets into, looks like, leadership roles in terms of activities. And it says, complex spacecraft like Columbus and ATV have been realized with cooperation among countries and companies. Looking forward to exploration and the prospect of developing complex spacecraft between countries, do you have any advice on how to decide who should lead a project? And does a particular technical role in realizing the system, like avionics or structures, put an organization in a better place to be the leader? So for these large mega type programs, how does the lead get determined, and how should it be determined? And I'll ask either of you to offer any thoughts.
I think the initial answer has got to be a rather crude one. Whoever pays the piper chooses the tune. If, as in let's say the western part of the space station, NASA are paying 75%, Japan 12%, Europe 8%, Canada 2%, if I remember the numbers. It's obvious who's going to be the lead. It couldn't be anything else. Unless, of course, the 75% came from somebody that had never done it before, then you'd have a bit of a problem, but maybe it'd be a nice problem to solve. Let's supposing, though, that there was a financial equality, then there should be a competence choice, I suppose. But I don't know that we'll ever get to a financial equality type of situation. Competence obviously matters, but as I say, the lead tends to be self-generated. Now, within Europe, we don't have to worry about bilateral agreements like that. We have to worry about anywhere from 10 to 20 countries that are contributing to a program. And again, the leadership of that program tends to be associated with the company from the member state who's paying the most. And one of the reasons why that member state will pay the most is because it wants one of its companies to be the leader. So it tends to be a rather osmotic process. It's not something that it's not rocket science.
Right, it's more straightforward. Did you?
Of course, it's correct. It's the amount of the money that is given by the delegation. Nevertheless, there are special or characteristic for the companies that are more specialized in certain field than other. It's clear that in Europe there are a few major companies that are specialized for system activity, that are capable to manage a big system activity, but in the meantime are more specialized for subsystem, like Thales in space. We are capable to manage major program at system level, but we procure subsystems from companies that are more specialized, like avionics or like components that we are not capable or is not profitable for us to develop. We are specialized basically in structure, thermal control, environmental, and we procure from other suppliers, not only for financial reason, for geographical distribution reason, but also for technical reason, because we would like to exploit at the maximum extent the competence of the company that are participating to the program.
So the competence in different areas and capabilities obviously is a key factor. Another question we have, both of you talked a lot about the relationships, and this one talks about, you mentioned cooperation, trust, and respect. The question is, was this sufficient, or is this sufficient, having that kind of a strong interpersonal trust and respect? And it's related to also, how do you induce, or how do you create knowledge sharing across a team where people are opening and expressing what's going on and raising issues? So it's kind of a double-ended.
Well, those characteristics are necessary to find the things, but of course, just having those characteristics wouldn't do it. You've got to have competence underneath it all. And in particular, you've got to have competence on the industry side, because they're the ones that do the work. I'm sorry, agency people, we're the ones that watch them do the work. They're the ones that do the work. And so the competence is absolutely necessary. But to properly exploit that competence, and it doesn't matter how competent problems are going to occur, then to put resources into the solution of that problem, that's when the softer skills become very much more important. But clearly the competence has to be underneath it all.
The way of managing in a friendly environment, if you wish, or with a facilitated relationship is important to cut the time, to shortcut the time for identifying the problem, but doesn't solve the problem. The problem is solved with the competence, with the proper engineering effort that is done in the proper manner. Nevertheless, the relationship and the trust help very much, because you can immediately realize that there are problems or there are successes that can be shared and can be used for the prosecution of activity, changing a little bit the way that we were doing the things before. If there are something positive that can be introduced, to have the possibility to have the door open to the suggestion, to the idea. I found that in many occasions ISA was very open to recognize there are good things that can be introduced, can be changed in the standard way of doing things, or improve something, and encourage us. And this was thanks to the fact that we were really facilitated to have a good relationship, instead to go through the very formal loop, and maybe that takes months and months or years before arriving at the right door. If we cannot at the right door in a short time and to inject the good idea, certainly this is beneficial for industry, but also for the agency.
This is a question that also seems somewhat related. What advice would you give future potential ISS partners, especially any lessons learned from the difficult period in 2000 that you mentioned? And so maybe to broaden it, as we work together on major international collaborations, what have we learned from the ISS experience, and how do we get better in the future, and what's the key lessons so that it's not a start over? And how do you deal with those difficult periods?
It's tough to try and put a prescription down for dealing with something like that, because getting into that kind of problem is probably a unilateral source of the problem. So,
well, you're a master, and we ask you the tough questions.
Oh, so Dino, you better take this one. No, I think that firstly, transparency is something that's terribly important. But if I step above the specific problem as such and think about what maybe would be a good guideline for future cooperation, I think one of the principal keys of a good guideline for cooperation, be it between agencies or be it between industries or whatever, is to a certain extent interdependency. If you've got partners, both of whom are going to have to rely on one another, then you've got a fairly good recipe to start to be able to implement something. If you've got a situation where if one of the partners were to fail and it didn't really matter all that much apart from a little bit of embarrassment, then that's not a good relationship. And to some extent on the ISS, that was a situation that we were in. If Columbus wasn't part of the ISS, it would be a disaster for Europe, perhaps, but it certainly wouldn't make very much difference to the performance and the exploitation by the Japanese, the Canadians, the Americans, and the Russians. It's cold, but if we weren't there, life would go on. However, if by taking Columbus away, the station would fall out of the sky, that would put you in a totally different type of position. Now, we got through the ISS because nobody exploited that situation happily. But for future, it's very good to be confident enough in the partnership and in your partner to allow for interdependence, and I think that can be quite a good key to make sure that the partnership can survive. Space Lab was a bit like that. Space Lab was necessary at one point for the shuttle to continue. Shuttle was under an awful lot of pressure to be cancelled at one time. But NASA were able to argue that they got this treaty with the Europeans to build the Space Lab, and that would be really bad, wouldn't it? And it helped. It wasn't the answer, but it helped to have the shuttle survive. Because without Space Lab, there wasn't an experiment platform for the shuttle. So interdependence can be quite a good key.
I fully share that the technocracy is a key element. However, I believe that having done the International Space Station is a new environment of cooperation. I believe that we have a solid basis to learn for the future program, how to organize the things, how to cooperate, how to trust among agencies that now have demonstrated to be capable to cooperate. So I believe the arrangement of the space station could be the reference for many programs in the future, especially for the exploration, the space exploration, where the amount of money that are needed are really huge, and share among the various countries could be the only possibility to achieve the goal, and the space station really could represent the best way to do the job.
Very good. We're down to a few minutes, so I'll compose a final question, which kind of a link. A large part of the audience are young professionals, practitioners, and what advice, what lessons would you give to people who are starting out in this profession in terms of being successful? And maybe related to that, what are your hopes for them and the field in terms of the future of human spaceflight?
Working the human spaceflight, I repeat, we have always to consider that we have the life of a few people in our hands. So it means that the major advice is the honesty. We have absolutely, in any moment of our activity, to be absolutely honest in the good things, but also in the negative, on the problem, to report immediately, to identify the problem, and not to deny any kind of negative information, because what seems a little problem today, maybe tomorrow could be really a serious problem or even a disaster. So this is certainly the problem. And associated to the honesty, there is also the transparency, that is another aspect. The other aspect is the accountability. Everybody should be proud of the work that is doing, because this is really fantastic job that we have. But everybody must be convinced that their work, their job is really important, even as a little piece of a big puzzle. We have to be fully accountable for what we are doing and the way that we are doing, in order to make sure that the puzzle is really a success, and we have to do properly our little job.
Yeah, I think you can see why I get on well with this guy. I mean, when a person has that kind of attitude, it's rather easy to respect and trust them. The advice I would give to young professionals, number one, there is a reality out there. Be patient. You're not going to run the world in the first few days. You have to be patient, be ambitious by all means, but realistically ambitious. It's necessary to go through the learning process and fight to learn. Take every opportunity to do on training courses, to watch what your peers are doing, watch what your bosses are doing, and learn. Then when the opportunity comes, you'll be there to be able to take it. The second point, I know it's a duplication and you shouldn't have duplications, but honesty is absolutely the thing to mention. Integrity it goes in two directions as well. It's honesty and integrity as far as being able to form proper relations with your counterparts is concerned. It's integrity in engineering as well. Engineering will find out cheats. People sometimes may not find out cheats, but engineering will always find out a cheat. So never cheat on your engineering. Always be honest, and as Dino said, if you see a problem, for goodness sake, raise it. Let people know about it. Don't hide behind it. It's not a shame to raise a problem. It's a good thing. Third thing, develop personal relations with people. Now let's talk. We've talked a lot about between agencies and with industry, but within your own team as well. When you're starting out, you're going to work for a boss, but imagine that you've got a subordinate. How would you like that subordinate to treat you? You would like him to show you a bit of respect and all that kind of stuff. So you treat your boss that way. And then when you do start to get subordinates, think about how you want your boss to treat you. And that's the way you should treat your subordinates. So if you work in that direction and work in that direction, if everybody were to do that, then life would be a little bit easier, I think. But learn the roles and responsibilities and treat people the way that you would like to be treated, I think is quite important. And the last thing I would recommend is perhaps the most important one. Be happy. Enjoy it. You work on the most fantastic opportunity to human spaceflight or any kind of spaceflight comes with that. Almost inevitably it's going to be globally international what you're working on. You're state of the art. It's just the most phenomenal career path that you could ever be on. Put a smile on your face and enjoy it, because you're going to have a lot of fun, and start out like that and always take the positives from what goes on. You'll get a bunch of negatives, solve them, they're challenges, but you'll get the positives as well. And when you see your vehicle go up there, you will cry your eyes out.
Thank you. I'm very happy. Hopefully you enjoyed the time. It's gone very fast. I want to thank very strongly Dino and Alan for taking the time with us and sharing their experiences and their stories. So thank you very much. And I also want to thank the support here, the IAF, particularly the folks who are doing the video recording, because we'll have this available shortly so that it can be seen by anyone, anywhere, anytime, as part of the lessons from leaders and master practitioners. So thank you all very much.